Hey friends, and welcome back to the Rewind podcast of Forward Church. Join us each week as we take a look back on Sunday's message and dig a little deeper into the conversations with those who are teaching across our sites at Forward. We want to invite you to be part of the conversation too. So if something we're talking about on Sunday morning sparks a question in you, head to our website, forwardchurch.ca/ask us, and submit your questions there. And we're going to do our best to engage with those questions in this space. With that said, let's jump in and get started.
Surprise! Oh,
Ooh.
that was...
We got Blair and Echo.
We have a feedback game. We're hearing ourselves. There we
There
go.
we go.
Let's try that again. I apologize for that. I did not realize how irritating my voice was. How did I get this job? Surprise! We are
Don't say it
here
like that.
early on a Tuesday podcasting with you. If you are hitting play, it's probably if you're hitting play at 1 o'clock, we're already done. And that's thank you to Kirk and Derek and Gabe.
Especially
Most
Gabe.
of all, Gabe.
Yes.
Especially Gabe.
For moving the time of the podcast. I have a very hot and sweaty picnic to go to at my daughter's school, and I'm looking forward to it.
It's supposed to feel like 42 outside this afternoon, Blair.
I really didn't need to hear that. But
I'm sure there'll be lots of shade.
it doesn't matter anyway, because right now I'm here with Pastor Kirk and Pastor Derek, and that's where I want to be. Isn't that
Where's
nice?
the picnic going to take place? On the tarmac outside of the school?
Yeah, on the grass or somewhere. I don't know. It's gonna be hot. I brought an umbrella like an old lady, and I plan on kind of
Bring a water gun.
Actually, they did say they were gonna have some water games, so maybe I'll just take part.
Actually, that feels like a good plug for Celebration Sunday. If people want to bring water guns,
Yep.
Sure.
bring them.
So-
Just make sure you're not aiming at any of our seniors.
We
Almost everyone else is fair game.
This is the time we should have got the dunk tank. Like that, we have a
Absolutely.
lineup of people to get in the dunk
That's
tank.
true. Rather than you and I getting
Yeah,
dunked
get
the
in
whole
the
time.
dunk tank
Yeah,
and
that's
we're
right.
frozen the whole time.
when were you in the dunk? Like when was the dunk tank there?
Some of our outreach parties, some of our block party stuff we've done.
And it
And
feels
it's
like it's
cold?
never been a hot day
No.
when we've had a
Oh,
dunk tank.
No.
Jeez.
Yeah, it's a little chilly.
Well, you heard it here, folks. Derek wants to get wet on Celebration Sunday, so
If someone arranged to have a dunk tank there, I would sit in it.
Celebration Sunday, as you guessed it, is this coming week. We are getting all of our sites together to celebrate 90 years, but also just celebrate. There's lots of things to celebrate, right? Like technically, like celebrating our Brant church. We're celebrating just our volunteers, right? Like we're just celebrating.
We're celebrating all the ministry that's
Yes.
taken place, all the lives that have been impacted and changed over the last year. So yeah, it is a celebration of the last year and then the cumulative impact of 90 years of Forward Church.
Love that. And so you're not going to want to miss it. Forward knows how to party. Like we know how to celebrate. I've been to many parties.
Yeah, if there's one thing Baptists are known for,
It's
let
a
me
big
tell
wild
you,
party.
it's like
I
those
was-
Baptists know how to party.
I was trying to smother that, stereotype by building it up.
Maybe
but
we learned how to party when we took Baptist out of the name.
Maybe.
Maybe, I don't know. I think we learned how to party when we got the right people involved in the planning and we always knew how to party. We're throwing people under the bus here. We got to stop. All right.
I'm not the anybody
know.
under the bus.
I want to know, because we are on week 2 of our new series, The Disciplines of Celebration. Well timed for a Celebration Sunday. This week we were talking about the discipline of Sabbath, and we talked about rest. And I need to know if you napped this weekend, and if so, was it in your favorite place to nap? Do you have a favorite place to nap?
Yes and yes.
Where did you nap?
So I napped twice.
Whoa.
Once on Saturday, once on Sunday. The Sunday was really short. I accidentally fell asleep for
On Sunday?
15 minutes. Yeah. Amanda's family was over.
Oh, no.
I did all the barbecuing.
Okay.
And then we got everybody there and we were chatting and I was like, I'm just going to go in the pool for a second. And I got on my floaty and before I knew it, my eyes were closed and I was just floating around the pool. And that is my favorite spot.
Is it your
My
floaties?
favorite spot is on a floaty in a pool. Any
That's
pool.
a pretty good spot.
Well, not any pool, because I don't want a bunch of kids around splashing. No kids allowed when I'm napping.
That sounds lovely, though.
A little breeze blowing over you. You sit in one of those floaties where the water kind of comes in through mesh, and
so you're
just
cool.
Cool.
Did you have sunscreen
weightless. I did have sunscreen
Good.
on.
Talk about practicing what you preach. Well done. Like, you are setting the example. Kirk, did you nap?
I did have nap. I had I had a nap on Saturday and had a good nap on Saturday. I don't have a favorite spot to nap. I'll just nap anywhere I can grab a nap. So wherever the moment hits.
Does it have to be dark? Do you have to have a pillow?
No.
No,
Does not have to be
do you
dark.
have to be horizontal? Can you nap vertically?
I can nap in any.
Wow.
Yes.
Practicing what you preach as well.
If matter of fact, if you come by my office someday and I look like I'm praying, there's at least a 50-50 chance I'm napping.
I appreciate that honesty. Truly, we actually talked about you last week, Kirk. I don't know if you heard the podcast, but was it last week? 2 weeks ago, when the pastoral conference was happening and you were there.
When it was up at NBC.
Yeah, and you sent a message on the chat and Gabe read it to us, and we were like, well, I hope he's relaxing. We're like, oh, he's not relaxing. He's probably working. And I was like, I think that guy knows how to chill. I bet he's
There wasn't a lot of relaxing happening.
Oh.
Because you get with a bunch of pastors and you all start talking shop. Like
Really?
It's not like you're sitting around talking about like floating on a pool with a bunch of pastors. You're just talking about
shop.
whatever, right?
All right,
So it's just a different rhythm when you're at a pastor's conference. You're not into the normal day-to-day routines.
So then, speaking of rhythm, when you nap, does it mess you up? Like, can you get to sleep at night? Does it mess?
It depends.
Depends on how long.
If I do like 30 minutes and under,
yeah,
that's
like a power nap.
Yeah, I just get a little bit of a jolt of energy.
Mm-hmm.
If I go like probably 40 to 60 minutes, I wake up and feel really sluggish.
Yeah.
And I feel worse than when I had a
Yes.
nap, but I will still be able to fall asleep at night. If I go past that hour point and I wake up feeling rested, it's not gonna be a good night.
I also
Sleeping.
I take a nap. So we have our discipleship group on Tuesday nights.
Okay.
And almost every Tuesday night, I have like a quick little power nap right after supper before I go out to discipleship group. Because otherwise I'd fall asleep in our own discipleship group.
Yeah. So how long is a power nap for you? Is that like the 30 and
about 30 minutes.
Okay.
Yep.
So I'm the same, but I never used to be this way. But I started power napping too, because my naps, we are avid Sunday afternoon nappers ever since my kids napped. And so it's like a thing. The girls know we eat lunch and then they can turn on the TV or something and we're going to nap. You're welcome to nap as well. It's the rule in our house. But if we do anything more than 45 minutes.
Do they ever take you up on your offer at this point to have a nap?
Lola did once,
Okay.
but that's it. Yeah.
Okay. I was
They're
going to say,
usually
because there is this point, right, where kids nap and then you nap with kids, but then kids no longer want to nap and you want to nap more than ever.
And then they become teenagers and you can't get them to do anything other than nap.
I'm kind of looking forward to that because I'll probably join them.
No, because Blair,
You won't.
Blair.
I know it's going to mess me up.
And they want to be up until like 1 a.m.
Yeah.
right.
And you're like 10 p.m. rolls around and you're like, guys, I am done.
Yeah. You're probably, you guys have
And
so
then
much
you're going to
to
try
teach
and get
me.
them out of bed
Yeah.
in the morning to do the things they have to do.
Yeah.
And you're going to feel like you've placed the most
Yeah.
onerous burden on them
Yeah.
that anybody has ever asked them to do by waking up and having
Yeah.
a shower
I was
and getting
gonna
ready
say.
to go to school.
Derek is speaking prophetically right now over your life.
Oh,
It is
I feel like it wasn't that long ago when I was doing that with my parents, but it was a long time ago. But it's true. I'm anticipating it. You guys have a lot to teach me when it comes to teenagers, but luckily we get to continue the conversation about resting, with some texted in questions this week. But we of course need to start the way we always start, which is by each of you giving us an overview of your message and the main takeaways. Derek, it sounds like you got a nap into Kirk. I was going to send Derek to start because he got a nap this weekend, but we'll just throw him under the bus first and you can start.
Yeah, I think what I wanted people to know was that Sabbath is a gift. It's not meant to be an onerous burden on us. In fact, if anything, it's meant to take away burdens that we take on ourselves that we aren't meant to carry.
And just like that, it was just kind of like that, wasn't it? It was a very clear discussion.
Yeah. I mean, it is. I think what I try to encourage people to understand is, I think we live in a culture that has actually gone the opposite way of where the kind of Old Testament culture went. The Old Testament culture was very strict on the rules of Sabbath, and even Jewish culture. And some Christians for many years have been very strict on rules of Sabbath. But I think over the last few decades, we've shifted more towards, take it or leave it.
Yeah.
And then we get burned out and we wonder why we're burned out. And I would argue that part of the reason we're burned out is because we haven't taken advantage of the gift that God's given to us to take this time each week to rest in Sabbath, right? And I also wanted people to see that the gift of Sabbath is not only for themselves, it's also an opportunity for them to give to others. That's what you see Jesus doing frequently on the Sabbath, is he's helping to give others some rest and refreshment. And so I think we live in a temptation in our culture of, for those of us who love to just vacation and take rests on weekends, that we make it very self-focused. And Sabbath in the Bible is not meant to be just purely self-focused. It is about helping our other people to find rest, but ultimately all of us finding rest in Christ and trusting him with the lordship of all of life.
Oh, I love that. I'm so curious this week to find out if there was anything that stood out to you in your prep and study this week, after you spent time working on your messages.
I mean, I shared some of it. There's a lot of research that's been done and is being done around rest, right? And how our limited finiteness as human beings means that our productivity tanks.
Yeah.
When we try and go beyond what we're actually capable of. We think that by just adding more and more and more things in our hours into the week that somehow we're going to produce more. But the fact of the matter is you're not. You're just working more to produce the same amount. And I shared in Kitchener a stat done, just a whole research survey that was done by Stanford University that talks about this reality that productivity falls off a cliff when you work more than 50 hours a week. By the time you get to 55 hours a week, it is indistinguishable what you produce from somebody who works 70 hours a week. So the extra 15 hours, your productivity gains between 50 hours and 55 hours were minimal. And by the time you hit 55 hours, you put another 15 hours in, you have actually accomplished no more.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And some like when that, I remember hearing that statistic before, and I remember reading about how some larger companies began making their employees' vacation time and away time mandatory. Like they had to take it. Which is kind of crazy because it does give it to me. I don't need to be forced to take vacation.
And I just say all that to say, God knows us better than we know us. We're really good at tricking ourselves about things.
Yeah.
But God knows how he's made us, how he's wired us. He knows that we are human.
Yeah.
And that the reason that he gives us Sabbath is the reason that he gives us bread, and the reason that he gives us water is because there are things in our lives that we need in order to flourish and function as human beings.
Yeah. One of you talked about the lie that we're more essential than we actually are. Was that you, Kirk?
Yeah,
I
think we probably both did then.
Yeah, that sounds familiar.
I actually made people turn to their neighbor and say, I am not essential.
How did that go? Did people do it? Did
people
you hear the
did it. Okay. They all did it in Kitchener. I had them turn to each other and say a number of things.
Yeah.
And one of them was I didn't want you to tell another person you are not essential. I wanted you to turn and tell somebody, I am not essential.
Social experiment.
Yeah.
That's cool. Was there anything that stood out to you, Kirk?
I think the thing that stands out to me around the whole conversation about Sabbath is I found it almost disheartening at times, the level of anger that some Christians have about Sabbath when they start to theologically discuss it. And like, there are just people who are like, we are not supposed to ever Sabbath, and it's not a thing for us anymore. And I'm like, man, you are so angry over this gift that God wants to give to you. I don't get it. And that was not new for me, but it was just interesting to revisit. The other thing I found really interesting thinking about studying it was think about the early church who lived in, like those who lived in Jerusalem and in a Jewish society where the Sabbath was on what would be our Saturday, and they gathered for worship on Sunday, on the first day, what would be our Sunday, the first day of the week.
Right.
And so, like, for them, they were actually, the day that they gathered for worship was a work day.
Yep.
Oh,
so they would have to build their life around, I'm going to go to work, but I'm also going to worship on that. And it was such an interesting thing to think about, the level of commitment and dedication after taking the Sabbath off. If you're running your own family business, you shut everything down on the Sabbath because culturally you lived in the space that did that.
Yeah.
And then to think about your first chance to reopen your business, you actually didn't, because the first thing you did was you gathered with the church to worship. And it was a very
fascinating.
Yeah, it was an interesting thing to think about, the kind of social pressures that could have been on first century Christians when it came to Sabbath and worshiping on the Lord's Day and all those things.
What can we circle back to, like, what is the theological argument against Sabbath, or do we not want to take that rabbit trail?
No, I think we should.
Yeah,
we can
we
talk
definitely
about that
What-
for
I've
sure.
never
It
heard that.
actually, I think it ties into one of the questions that you were
Okay.
going to
Yeah.
ask. Anyhow,
Yeah.
Okay.
And I would actually fall into the camp that there is not a command to Sabbath, that it is the only command that is not repeated in the New Testament, because Sabbath is actually pointing us towards an ultimate fulfillment in Christ. That's very different, though, than saying you shouldn't Sabbath.
Right.
Oh, okay.
It means
Right.
that you're not sinning. And
Right.
if we go to Romans 14:5, there's some theological justification there. Paul's talking about disputable matters, and amongst that, not along with the eating stuff, he says, hey, some people think you have to celebrate on a day, and other
Right.
people think that you don't. Don't get into arguments and fights about that, which is the interesting thing, right? Even
Yeah.
the passage you're going to go to, one of the key
Right.
passages is like, don't get yourself wound up about that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If somebody feels they need to, let them do it.
Right.
Just the important thing, as Paul says in all of that, is just to honor Christ,
Yeah.
right? To make sure that your lives are set aside. If you say, hey, I'm going to make sure that I don't think it is a cancellation of the need for humans to rest, to create space, to worship, to spend time with each other. I think it's saying the structures that were given of Sabbath in the Old Testament no longer apply to you as New Testament people who have found your rest in Christ, right? And I looked at Hebrews 10 in my message and talked about this fact that Christ is our rest.
Yep.
When he said it is finished,
Right.
it was the completion of the salvation work, and he sits down
Yeah.
to show it's done.
Yeah.
So there is that reality. Now that we come to Sabbath, some of the accoutrements around Sabbath are kind of pushed to the side because they were all pointing us towards the fact that we needed a better rest.
Right.
We needed a greater rest, and Christ is our ultimate rest. But now that you have the real thing, the total thing, it doesn't mean don't enjoy it at all.
Right.
It means fully enjoy it.
Right.
Like you have an ability to enjoy it in a fuller way than what people who were under the old covenant would have been able to enjoy it, because they didn't come to the point where they would be able to experience the fullness of rest that is found in Christ. That would be what I would say. But some people in their pushback against a legalistic mindset of Sabbath become legalists themselves.
Yeah.
Like a
And
pendulum.
and in so doing, I think they forfeit and give up what is such a good gift.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah, and we have to remember, like, the New Testament tells us that the law is given to us to actually reveal our sinfulness.
Yeah.
That's why the law exists. And it's not just meant to kind of control all of our behavior, because we can't measure up to the law.
Yeah.
So the law is given to reveal our sinfulness, which then reveals our need for Jesus in the first place. So like, I wholeheartedly agree with everything that Derek has said. I think that what people who lean heavy into a reaction against Sabbath keeping, I think what they are missing out on is that Sabbath was something that was part of the original created design
Correct.
of the world.
Yeah.
It wasn't a new idea when the 10 Commandments are given.
Yep.
It is something that God hardwired in before sin ever entered into the equation.
Yep.
As part of his desire for us as humans is that we would rest. And I firmly believe, in going back to some of the studies that Derek was just talking about, I think that what we are seeing is God actually made our bodies to only be able to do so much.
Yes.
And some people will say, well, that means that I can work hard like every day for 6 months and then take a day off for a rest. I'm like, I think that's going against the way God wired your body to function. You are like, a gift to yourself is to receive the gift that God's given to you of this day of rest each week. And so enjoy it.
Yep.
Which is part of the reason why I think when Jesus comes along, Jesus celebrates Sabbath, but he doesn't celebrate it in all the ways that would have been celebrated traditionally by all the Jews.
Yeah.
He actually gives us the perfect example of what Sabbath was meant to be. So when he's getting in trouble for healing people on the Sabbath and feeding people on the Sabbath and things like that, what he's really saying is, no, like, Sabbath is a day for community. Sabbath is a day for caring for other people's needs and helping to lift them up and search and serve them based on where their own hunger is at, right? So it's not just about your own rest, but in your place of rest, you can help other people find rest as well. So Jesus gives us a much fuller picture of what Sabbath keeping looks like.
I think you get to, this is the heart of the verse that we were in, that man wasn't made for the Sabbath, but the Sabbath for man, right? And that's at the heart of this, is learning that, like, this is a gift.
Yeah, right.
It's given to you. Sabbath was made for you because I know that you need it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We're probably going to bring that up again and again. But this is already such a good podcast, and we've barely gotten started, which makes me so excited. I thought, like, going back to when you were talking about the command, the law, and how it kind of reveals our limitations and whatnot, our need for Christ. I thought it was cool. The thing that stood out to me this week was that I thought it was cool that you kind of talked about how it's the commandment that starts with remember, not thou shalt, or thou shalt not.
Yeah.
And the fact that it's in the same list as like things like, don't murder and stuff like that is a big deal. This is not this is important.
Yeah. And I think it's important for us to remember it's a gift that God gives to us, but it's also a way that we honor God and actually show that we believe God knows what's best for us.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. Is that where the celebration part comes in?
Yeah.
Yeah. I love that. Celebration, Sabbath.
And frankly, a nap is
from. Does that include some aspects of parenting? My son has been diagnosed with a social disorder, and he is very difficult to parent on the best of days. Yet I feel guilty for feeling like I need a rest from the constant antisocial behaviors. He's my son, and I love him. We're always asking for specifics from our listeners, so this is specific, which I love.
When we had our second child, he was really difficult during the night. He had all sorts of physical pain from gases, and then on top of that, when he got angry, he was angry, and so he would scream from maybe like 1 o'clock to 4:30 in the morning every single night for 9 months straight. And Amanda, God blessed us with the fact that one of Amanda's really good friends was a public health nurse who worked with moms and new babies.
That's amazing.
And one of the words of wisdom that she gave to Amanda and to I was, you need to have rest to be the type of parent that your child needs the rest of the time. And so if there's nothing more that you can do at a point to comfort your child, it's okay to put them down and to allow them to cry if it's going to keep you from doing something. I'd always thought, how could anybody shake a baby? But when you've gone week after week after week with no sleep and just screaming, and you're frustrated and you don't know how to take care of this child that's in front of you, it was the first time in my life where I totally understood how somebody could shake a baby to the point where you would do damage, right? And so this not the exact comparable. I just want to state that, but I think there is space to say when God puts you in a situation with some really pressing, difficult needs. I also used to work for community living, and one of the things that we did was respite care for families who had kids who just needed constant care, right? And the reason those families oftentimes took the respite care is because they loved their kids deeply. And they wanted to be the type of parents who had the ability to care for their kids when they had them in their care. And so sometimes we need to rest in order to be the parents that we need to be. It doesn't mean you can't neglect the needs of your kids, but it does mean this is one of the reasons why we need community around us. We need supports around us. We're not meant to do all these things on our own. I mean, we live in this atomized kind of nuclear family focused reality in the West, but we actually need broader support networks that will help to care for us. So I would just say, don't feel guilt in that you can't fully meet the need of a child who has higher than normal needs. It means that you're going to probably need some people around you to help carry the load so that you can rest and be the parent that they need the rest of the time.
Yeah, and I would just add, this is just a small thing, but I think that every parent feels the weight, depending on the age of a child, the sheer volume of things that need to be done to take care of a child, even like things like the obvious things of doing laundry, right? Like, I just got to make sure I have clean clothes for my kid. And maybe your Sabbath is not a 100%, I have to get my kid out of the house and away from me. Maybe that's not feasible for you, but maybe your Sabbath is some of those extra things that can wait a day, that you actually just take a breath and give those things the ability to wait a day and give yourself a little bit of extra space to be able to breathe, exhale a little bit, and spend some time with your family, or just even alone with the Lord if your kid's having a nap somewhere. Like, just like creating those spaces if you can. 'Cause I know that parents feel the pressure to what's the next chore we have to do, what's the next thing, and just trying to build your life around giving some margin on that day.
And for all parents, Kirk and I have actually talked about this, that all of the stats and studies show that parents today spend large quantities of time more with their kids, both dads and moms with their kids, than they did 20 years ago. And I think we put some pressures on ourselves as parents. I do think there's an aspect of we don't have the social networks, and I would love to see, we're going to probably over the course of the next year, there'll be a few times we're going to be talking about friendships and the importance of developing those social relationships, not just for ourselves, but because we need other people in our lives. But also I think that there's some standards, some expectations that parents have put on themselves as to the amount of input and time that their kids need, that is actually both unhealthy for them and for their kids in the long run. And I'm not saying that to this specific situation. I want to say this just to all parents of kids, of like, cut yourself some slack and some grace.
Yeah. Oh, that's such good tips. It's nice to have parents talking about all the hard parenting things. One little parenting tip two actually. You talked, both of you, actually I think it was just Kirk, one of you talked about scheduling Sabbath, schedule your parent break. Saturday morning is my mommy time. Steve is a morning person. He gets up, he makes the girls waffles, and it's daddy-daughter time, and I get to just stay in my room and either sleep or do whatever I want. until about like 9 o'clock. Then he sends them in like a bunch of dogs. But
But still,
it's like I tell him all the time. I'm
it's
like,
a little piece of heaven on earth for you.
oh,
right?
I'm like,
Yeah.
dude, this is a game changer. Like
Yeah.
I catch my breath. I'm happy. But anyway, and the other
And put it in the calendar. That's
oh,
what
yeah,
I
it's
said. Like,
Saturday.
actually slot it in your
Yeah.
calendar. Don't leave it as white space or it'll get
Yeah.
eaten up.
Yeah, like some people will just keep filling things into their calendar. You
Yeah.
make an appointment with yourself called Sabbath,
yes.
and just take it.
Actually, yeah, I have another thing to bring up too. This kind of ties back to what you said at the beginning about opportunities to celebrating Sabbath by providing rest for other people.
Yeah.
So as a community, we talked about community in the world of parenting too. Like there's an opportunity where
Yeah,
you
Absolutely. Do a play day
Yeah.
where you take their kids for a little bit
can.
and then they take your kids for a little bit and you both get a bit of a space.
Yeah. And Safe Families, if you're someone who wants to serve that way too, and like I know Safe Families provides that too, so you can connect that way. Maybe, how can they do that? Talk to
Well, in Kitchener, they
Yeah.
can talk to Jen
Jen, yep, and then
and here
Palmer, and then here
Yeah.
it's Nunn,
Laura
Laura
Nunn.
Nunn.
Yeah.
Why did I?
Just call her Nun.
her
Why
name.
just call her Nun?
I
Hey, Nun.
I think that's called. Everybody calls Andrew.
Or
Nunner,
you can
and
just
I'm-
go to the Safe Families
Yes.
website and
Yes, I love that.
Yep.
We could talk-
learn about all the different volunteering opportunities there.
We could talk about parenting things all day. Also, I know I took advantage of mommy groups. I know they're not for everybody, but they were my
Yep.
lifesaver.
Yeah, Shannon did the same thing.
Oh my
She
goodness.
loved them. It was
And
great.
but I'm social, right? So for me, social, it fills my tank. So, come talk to me if you need some mommy groups. I know of a bunch.
But it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter whether you're an introvert or extrovert. You still need people.
People need people.
You still need some people around you.
Go listen
Yeah.
to the song by Kane. People need people. Kay used to think it was people need pickles. Anytime we have pickles, she's like, people need pickles. Anyways, back to what matters, which is another texted in question. Am I right in thinking that difference between real rest versus escaping from responsibilities by doing something like scrolling when we are tired is whether it honors God? Is it a matter of motive or intention, or does the way we rest matter? Oh, I like that question a lot.
So first of all, like there is a general Bible principle that all of life is meant to honor God,
Right.
no matter what you're doing, right? So if whether you're scrolling to rest or whether you're scrolling just to scroll, if your scrolling is not in your conscience is not going to be honoring to God, you shouldn't be scrolling.
Yeah.
So just to kind of push that out of the way. I do think that rest looks different for different people. And I think what this kind of question, it fits into what human nature is. Human nature is, oh, okay, you want me to rest. What does that mean?
Yeah.
What am I allowed to do?
Give
and
me the
not allowed to
boundaries.
do
Give me the rules.
in terms of rest, which is why you end up with the kind of-
39 rules of categories
Right.
of rules. Yeah.
You know, that's why you have that kind of chaos that ends up happening because people are trying to answer that question. And
Yeah.
so we're not going to answer that question with the thou shalt not and thou shalt do this and not do that.
Yeah.
I think it's more about understanding how God wired you. What is restful for you as a person, right? And so like I have learned, I used to feel guilty at times taking naps. I used to feel guilty
Yeah.
because you feel like, man, it's not being very productive taking a nap.
Yeah.
Right. But then the more that you start to learn, like, man, actually that nap felt pretty restful.
Yeah.
Then I stopped feeling guilty about it because I started to realize that this is part of how I rest.
Yeah.
I take a nap.
Yeah.
Some people, they'll rest by going out and doing gardening, and they find it incredibly relaxing to go out and do gardening.
Yeah.
Right. So go do your gardening as a way of
Yep.
relaxing and resting.
I think we all know what it feels like when our tank is being filled and when
Right.
our tank is being depleted.
Right.
Yeah.
And what God wants you to do is do some things that fill your tank.
Right.
You don't have to do the things that other people do to fill their
Right.
tank. You need to do the things in the way that God has wired you to just so that you grow in your appreciation of the goodness of God.
Yeah.
Like there's things that I do where I'm like, this just makes me realize God's goodness towards me.
Yeah.
and so that you grow in your ability and capacity to love people, even the difficult people that may come into your life during the week, and to get through the stuff that God's got in front of you that are going to be tougher things.
Yeah, I love that. How do you guys rest? Give me a short version. What do you find restful? That like napping, I know you said.
Yeah,
probably typical for
napping. Reading for me is doing some reading of books is relaxing and restful for me.
Not gardening.
Not gardening. Sitting out on my back deck and just listening to the birds while I'm reading a book is very restful for me.
I love that.
I love being out in nature. So water, anywhere where there's water, is very relaxing and restful. But I also like, on my Sabbath. So my Sabbath day usually is a Friday. And on my Sabbath day last week, I went and spent time visiting with my dad. And that for me was very relaxing. We went out for lunch together. We laughed and joked around, and we had a great time together. So, yeah.
I love that. How do you rest?
I like to bike, as I've shared before. I like to just putter in my backyard. So that does include gardening for me. It includes mowing the lawn. It includes skimming and vacuuming my pool.
Floating it.
I just kind of putter and do things. I could spend like hours. And
that's a good word, puttering. I like that.
Just kind of doing little things, but I'm outside. I'm in the sun.
Yeah.
I am my backyard does back onto some nature, and so I'm hearing the birds sing, and I just love it. Like I just my soul just feels full. And then I know the people in my life that fill my tank, and I know the people or the situations where I'm going to encounter people that are more likely to drain me of energy. And so I try and put myself in positions and around people that will fill my tank on days where I'm and times where I'm trying to rest.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. These are feel like tips on how to rest. This weekend, Steve and I were at our trailer. And on Saturday, we put the girls to bed, and we thought they were sleeping. They weren't. And then we took our Muskoka chairs and we plopped them right in front of the water. Mm-hmm. And we watched the sun set in dead silence right next to each other.
That's great.
And the best part was that there was quite a bit of grass between the water and us. So there was wildlife. We saw bunnies were hanging out and bird. Anyway, at the end of it, I was like, dude, like I'm good. Like that was awesome. Yep. And he was like,
that's what it feels like to rest.
The one thing I would encourage people to do, and Derek tied into this a couple minutes ago, but I would say like keep Jesus in mind while you're resting. So
that's
how does enjoying nature point you to the God who created it and make you grateful for him, right? Because I think I said on Sunday that rest without Jesus is just simply a long weekend or a vacation,
right?
And that's not the ultimate purpose of the Sabbath rest is to point us to our need for Jesus.
Yeah, totally.
All this is going to probably tie into gratitude this week because there should be gratitude at the center of that, right?
Sure. I love that. I mean,
even when you take a vacation, this is part of resting.
Yeah.
But to have the gratitude to Jesus to say, hey, thank you for giving me this gift.
Yeah.
Thank you for allowing me to be in a space where I can have this opportunity.
That's so huge. I'm looking forward to next week already. Let's hit a couple more questions before we wrap up. This was a me question. So many of us.
I thought you were going to say, I really love this question.
I think this is a me
question. This is the best question in the whole
Who
list.
wrote these? They're amazing. No, I'm just kidding. Okay, so many of us have a hard time stopping to rest. Can this be more than just a pace? Can something like productivity become an idol in our lives?
Yep.
And if so, how do we identify it then? Is it the identifying?
If you can't rest,
yes, that's a problem.
That is
a red flag.
That's a red flag that you have some type of an idolatry issue.
Yeah.
And so right at the close of the service on Sunday, I said to everyone, I had everyone close their eyes, and I said, like, what is it that stops you from resting? Mm-hmm. And people will have something that will immediately come to their mind. And whatever it is that's stopping you from resting, you have to evaluate, why can't I trust Jesus with that?
Yeah.
Why can't I trust Jesus enough with it to actually stop and rest? Mm-hmm. And and because it's a good indicator that that thing may be an idol in your life.
Yeah, it could be productivity could be an idol.
Yeah.
People pleasing could be an idol that keeps you from resting.
Yeah.
Control can be an idol that keeps you from resting. There's all sorts of things, but generally, whatever it is, if there's Kirk's exactly right. If there's something that is the barrier to keep you from resting, it's an idol because you're saying this thing matters more to me than what God has called me into.
Yep.
And part of it also is the belief that like you have to have these things, right? You have to do these things. These are what give you value and meaning. And now you've found your value and meaning in something other than God, and that's idolatry.
Yeah, and for me, the thing that I've learned is that sometimes it's simply about thinking these things won't get done unless I do them.
Yeah.
Right? And then you have to actually ask yourself the question, does it really matter? Like, and am I taking control, to come to Derek's point about control? Am I taking control of the situation, saying, God, sorry, God, you're not enough.
Yeah.
I'm the one that has to actually make sure this gets done.
Yeah.
And really, that's what it boils down to in terms of a trust issue with Jesus. Do I trust Jesus enough to actually take the day to rest so that he will replenish me and refresh me to do the work that he's called me to do the other 6 days of the week?
I love that. A direct answer. Maybe we can hit off a bunch of these by just quick answers. I don't know, but I do have to say they're pretty good questions. Okay. Here's a good one. And it might be a quick answer. I don't know. Some find being around people to be work or exhausting. Are they excused from the expectation of loving others or dwelling with others on their Sabbath? I feel like I worded it.
I missed the subtitle in Jesus' command to love other people.
Only if you're an extrovert.
Yeah.
Did I say?
Only if you got the energy to do it. Only if people don't annoy you too much.
So what you're saying is our questions aren't that good.
No, because I do think we can buy into the lies of culture that try and tell us this is who you are, and so that's okay because this is just who you are, right?
And I think
in all sorts of ways, and one of those includes, listen, I'm an introvert.
Yeah.
And I've heard a lot of introverts say to me, well, but the people stuff. Yeah, the people stuff is for you too. Now, here's one of the things I know about me as an introvert, and I've already shared this a little bit.
Yeah.
Some types of situations and settings take more out of me. Some people, I think for all of us, whether you're an extrovert or an extrovert or an introvert, take more out of you. Amanda and I we have a term that we will say they are an EGR.
Oh yeah, you brought this up.
Extra grace required person, right? But in order for me to offer grace, I have to be in a space where I have lived in and am receiving grace. And that's part of the thing that Sabbath accomplishes for me is to live in the grace of God, right? And that gives me an ability to have a little bit more in the tank when God brings people to me that are just more challenging for me to deal with for whatever reason. It's probably as much or more to do with me than it is to do with them.
It's not like a diss. It's more of
But I want to be able to love them well.
Yeah.
And I know if I don't have enough in the tank, I'm going to struggle to love that person well in the moment. So I'm probably not going to, as my rest, set up a one-on-one time where I'm going to spend 2 hours with them. I need the rest so that if I need to do that later on in the week, I've got the ability to do it. My family, I'm thankful for, fills my tank.
Yeah.
I love spending time with my family. I always leave time, most of the time, leave time with my extended family, just having them around me feeling more filled up than when I left.
Yeah.
That's not the case for everybody. I know that. And I don't expect that to be the case. But you have to know the people.
Yeah.
There has to be people in your life that fill you up more than they take out of you.
It's a strategic thing.
So you don't have to schedule your rest with the people who exhaust you.
No.
But you need to have people around you that you... I said on Sunday, if you think about the order of creation, to go to Kirk's point, this is rooted in the order of creation. Adam and Eve's first day
Yep.
was
A
the day of rest.
Yeah.
It was the day Jesus or that God rested from creation.
Yep.
Yeah.
So they worked out of their rest.
That's right.
So if there are people in your life who are work, then allow them to be the people that you love and care for out of your rest. But there are other people who are going to build into you, and those might be the people you need to put into your day for rest.
Yeah, I would add, like, for extroverts, a day of rest can be equally very difficult for an
yeah,
extrovert, because for an extrovert, a day of rest actually may be a space where they need to be in solitude,
Slow down.
slow down, and just spend time alone with God.
Yeah.
Right, which could feel very hard at first.
Yeah.
Because the extrovert is receiving value from the other people as opposed to receiving their rest from God. And so, yeah, it's an equal challenge no matter who you are. There are things about it that will feel awkward and difficult, but that's okay. God's with you. God's here to help you, and he will give you all that you need to obey Him. And
Yes.
I love that. Well answered. Let's hit off one more here before we wrap up. I'm going to ask this one. Where does serving every Sunday morning and resting link? Does serving too much void the practice of Sabbath? So we talked about serving, right? And serving other people. Is there, I mean, we tend to, as humans, overdo things.
So here's one of the places where serving all the time has the potential to override or become something that's contradictory to God's call to rest.
Okay.
It is when you are looking for that service opportunity to become your identity and sense of meaning.
Okay.
When you live in a space where you go, I can't not serve,
Yeah.
then you've got a problem.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because instead of finding your rest in Jesus,
Yeah.
you're finding your rest in the doing.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think what Jesus would want you to hear is to find your rest in Him.
Yeah.
Right. So serving, you see it all through the New Testament. Serving is part of what we do on Sabbath. Jesus served people on the Sabbath, got in trouble for it, but served people on Sabbath.
Yeah.
Right. So nothing wrong with doing it, nothing wrong with doing it regularly.
Yeah.
But just be careful that it doesn't become the thing that's your identity.
Or that lie that you're essential.
Right. Or that lie that you're essential.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. This is like Mary and Martha is the story that comes to mind.
Yeah.
Of Martha's busy, she's serving, she's getting everything ready. And part of it, I think, too, that would be a signal for you is that you judge in your heart
Yeah.
Yeah.
others who aren't doing and acting in the same way that you are in that moment, right? Then that's part of what was going on there. And I think she was really taken aback when Jesus told her that Mary chose the better option of just sitting at the feet of Jesus.
Yep.
I think it goes back to a lot of our conversation about productivity and people. What are your motivations here? What Kirk and I don't want to do is give a whole bunch of new regulations and rules.
Right.
Yeah.
Take it to the Lord.
Yeah.
Ask Him to reveal to you where your heart is at, and then deal with it appropriately as He leads you.
Yeah.
And then don't apply your standards and how God has wired you and what He's calling you to other people to use that as the standard of judgment.
Yeah. And like, I think if you end up getting to a place of burnout, by then it's like, it's hard to get.
By the time you realize you are burnt out, you've been burnt out a while.
Most of this is a generalized statement, so nobody should take this as Kirk is talking about me personally. Generalized statement, but most burnout is preventable if we actually have rhythms of Sabbath built into our life.
That is like a mic drop moment there. I'd say drop your mic, but no, that's like just the period at the end of the sentence. I think that's huge. I want to ask this one, but I feel like I'll maybe give you guys the mic for any thoughts or words of encouragement that you would like to leave your listeners with this week.
I know that when we have this discussion, there's always a person who's sitting there thinking, yeah, but I'm the exception.
Mm-hmm.
Well, no, I like, but you don't know me. Like I can keep on going, and I'm just a really high capacity person.
Yeah.
And I will just tell you, I don't know you, but God knows you. And he's telling you, rest. And if you don't rest, you will end up sidelined one way or the other. This is the reality of burnout, right? Is that we haven't done what we needed to do. And because of our limitations as human beings, and we all have limitations, then we just come to the end of ourselves and we get sidelined anyhow. And it's much better to not have that happen and to actually practice a discipline of rest than to be forced into it and then to try and recover from it.
Oh, no, that's amazing.
Yeah, I would add to what Derek has said and just say, if you know someone who needs to take this rest, love them enough to sit down and be honest and have the conversation. Because that is part of how we can care for each other as a community of faith and as families and in our marriages, is to see the things that are happening in someone else's life and to be able to go, how are you doing on that rhythm of rest? And really calling each other to enjoy this gift that God's given to us. And if someone calls you out on it, don't take it as a personal attack. Like, take it as someone genuinely loving you enough to care and say, trust God enough to rest. This to me is the big aha with rest. It is an expression of trusting God with my life.
Yeah, I love that. And I think that's where God becomes the center of your Sabbath, right?
Yeah.
Is the trusting God with your rest. That's huge. Man, I wish we could keep chatting. Believe it or not, it's bucket filling. Good conversations are bucket filling for me. And oh no, you guys probably don't find it restful, but I do.
No, I love these conversations.
Yeah,
I like
good.
it.
Great.
Yeah.
Sweet. I'm so glad. Well, be excited then, because we're going to do it again next week. And it's on the discipline of gratitude. If Keith doesn't pick gratitude as by Brandon Lake on this coming Sunday, I'm going to write a letter.
It's not on the list.
Oh my goodness. Well, then here's your homework. Listen to Gratitude by Brandon Lake this week as you prepare for 1 Thessalonians 5:17-18 and our celebration Sunday.
Wherever you are, if you're from Kitchener, you're from Ingersoll, you're from Cambridge, and
Just
you
watch us online and you never have shown up
get
before.
Here in Cambridge this Sunday, 10 a.m., we are together as one church.
We add any
to
more
celebrate.
baptisms, I'll have no time left to preach, I can tell you.
Really?
That's awesome. We have so many people who want to get baptized. It's honestly, we are going to have a great day.
Yeah, it's going to be awesome.
Yeah.
So don't go to Kitchener friends. There will be no one there. And Ingersoll people are also coming. So it's going to be amazing. And but it starts at normal times, right? Like nothing's changing that
10 a.m.
way. Yeah,
normal
it's all
time.
all the things are the same.
Yep.
So get excited. I know I am. And we'll see you. I always have trouble wrapping up. So I'm just going to say thanks for tuning in. And we'll see you guys next week.